There is a dangerous misconception that psychological healing transforms you into something harmless. You have been sold a narrative that suggests the highest form of empathy is unconditional softness, a state of perpetual availability where your heart remains open regardless of who stands at the gate. This is not only a lie, it is a strategic vulnerability that has cost you decades of your life. When an empath truly integrates their shadow, they do not turn to the mystics for guidance. Whether they realize it or not, they turn to the realists. They turn to the principles of Niccolo Machiavelli. For centuries, Machiavelli has been misunderstood as a teacher of evil, but for the empath, he is the teacher of survival. He did not advocate for cruelty for the sake of cruelty. He advocated for the effectual truth of the world, seeing things exactly as they are, not as we wish them to be. The unhealed empath suffers precisely because they refuse to see the effectual truth. You see potential where there is only predation. You see a wounded child where there is a grown adult making conscious choices to exploit you. When an empath finally understands power, the transformation is terrifying to those who have grown comfortable using you as a resource. You do not become a narcissist, you become something far more formidable. You become a strategist who possesses the ultimate intelligence data. You know exactly how people feel, what they fear, and what they want. But you no longer feel compelled to fix it for them. You stop being a sponge and you become a mirror, hard, reflective, and completely impenetrable. Let us dismantle the architecture of your previous life and look at what happens when empathy meets Machiavellian strategy. This is the transition from the victim to the sovereign. Before this integration, your empathy was a liability. You operated under the naive assumption that if you gave enough understanding, enough patience, and enough love, others would eventually reciprocate. You projected your own conscience onto people who had none. In the study of power dynamics, this is a fatal error. Machiavelli wrote that a man who wishes to make a profession of goodness in everything must necessarily come to grief among so many who are not good. You have lived this grief. You have been the person trying to play by the rules of honor in a game that was rigged for exploitation. The moment you understand power, you stop projecting your goodness and start observing reality. You realize that your empathy is not a spiritual burden, it is high-level reconnaissance. Think about what you can actually do. You can walk into a room and sense the hidden hierarchies immediately. You can hear the insecurity in a boast. You can feel the envy radiating from a compliment. Previously, you used this information to adjust yourself to make others comfortable. You shrank yourself so their insecurity wouldn't feel threatened. You silenced your intuition so their lies could stand unchallenged. The integrated empath stops this self-betrayal instantly. You begin to use your perception as data. When you feel someone's hidden aggression, you don't try to heal it. You note it. You log it in your mental database. You prepare for it. This is the shift from passive absorption to active assessment. You realize that you have been walking around with a superpower that you were using against yourself. This brings us to the first great Machiavellian realization for the empath, the lion and the fox. Machiavelli argued that a prince must be a fox to recognize traps and a lion to frighten wolves. The unhealed empath is neither. They are the rabbit, highly sensitive, always alert, but ultimately prey. When you integrate power, you embrace the fox. You realize that you do not owe anyone the full truth of your internal world. The unhealed empath overshares. You explain your feelings, your boundaries, and your reasons, hoping that if you just explain clearly enough, the other person will understand and respect you. You believe that transparency builds trust. But in the presence of manipulative personalities, transparency does not build trust. It provides ammunition. The empowered empath learns the strategic value of silence. You stop explaining. When someone violates a boundary, you do not write them a 3-page letter explaining how they hurt you. You simply withdraw access. You become the fox. You recognize the trap of the argument, the trap of the guilt trip, the trap of, we need to talk, when the talk is just a venue for them to gaslight you. You sidestep the trap. You give them nothing to latch onto. You watch them spin their narratives while you stand completely still, offering no emotional fuel for their fire. Then you embrace the lion. The lion is the capacity for absolute boundary enforcement. Machiavelli famously noted that it is better to be feared than loved if one cannot be both. For the empath, let us translate feared to respected. You have spent your life trying to be loved, and in doing so, you have sacrificed respect. You allowed people to interrupt you, to borrow from you without repaying, to drain your time, to dump their emotional waste into your living room. You did this because you feared that asserting yourself would make you unlovable. The integrated empath understands that love without respect is merely dependency. When you finally understand power, you become willing to be the villain in their story. This is a crucial threshold. You must be willing to let them call you cold. You must be willing to let them call you selfish. You must be willing to let them tell the world that you have changed and that you are difficult now. The lion does not care about the opinion of the sheep. The lion cares about the integrity of the territory. When you embody this, your energy shifts. You no longer walk into a room apologizing for your existence. You walk in with a contained, dormant power. People sense it. The predators, the narcissists, the energy vampires, they can smell the difference. They used to see an open door. Now they see a fortress with archers on the walls. They might test the perimeter once or twice, but when they are met with the lion, a firm, non-negotiable no, a refusal to engage in drama, a calm stare that sees right through their mask, they retreat. They look for easier prey. This leads to the second phase of your transformation, the economy of presence. In economics, scarcity creates value. In relationships, the same rule applies. The unhealed empath floods the market with their presence. You are always available, always picking up the phone, always ready to listen. You made your empathy cheap, and so it was treated as a cheap commodity. It was wasted by people who did not have the currency to afford it. When you understand power, you artificially induce scarcity. You pull back. You act on Machiavelli's understanding that familiarity breeds contempt. You do not become distant out of malice. You become distant out of discernment. You realize that your energy is a finite resource, like gold, and you stop throwing it into the ocean. This is where you become dangerous to the status quo of your family and social circles. They are used to your subsidies. They are used to you subsidizing their emotional immaturity. When you stop, when you withdraw your presence, two things happen. First, they panic. They try to provoke you to get the old reaction back. They want the rabbit back. But secondly, and more importantly, they are forced to carry their own weight. By withdrawing, you force others to face the consequences of their own lives. This is the most Machiavellian form of love there is. It is the tough love of the realist. By refusing to save them, you give them the only chance they have to save themselves. And if they cannot, you accept that outcome too. You accept that you cannot save everyone, and more importantly, that you have no right to interfere with their karma. The final stage of this integration is the mastery of the surgical severance. Machiavelli advised that if an injury has to be done to a man, it should be so severe that his vengeance need not be feared. In the context of psychological warfare and abusive relationships, this translates to the door slam. The unhealed empath lingers. You break up, but you stay friends. You set a boundary, but you let them cross it just one more time. You leave the door cracked open because you hope for closure. The empath who understands power knows that closure is a myth. Closure is something you give yourself. When you identify a person or a situation that is fundamentally corrupt, fundamentally parasitic, or fundamentally committed to your destruction, you do not negotiate. You do not taper off. You sever. This is the cold steel of the integrated shadow. You possess the capacity to cut a connection completely and irrevocably. You block the number. You delete the emails. You change the locks. You remove yourself from their physical and digital reality. To the outsider, this looks cruel. To the uninitiated, this looks like a lack of empathy. But you know the truth. It is the ultimate act of self-preservation. It is a surgical amputation of a gangrenous limb to save the body. You do this without anger. Anger implies you are still engaged. You do it with the cold indifference of a judge delivering a sentence. You have weighed the evidence. You have seen the patterns. You have calculated the probability of change and found it to be zero. Therefore, the relationship ends. This capacity to walk away without looking back is the ultimate power. It signals to the world and to your own subconscious that you are no longer a hostage to your need for connection. What emerges from this process is not a monster, but a king or a queen. You have combined the sensitivity of the empath with the strategic mind of the general. You can still feel the beauty of a piece of music. You can still cry at the suffering of the innocent. You can still love your partner and your children with a depth that is ocean deep. But your castle has a drawbridge, and you are the only one who knows the code. You have learned the hidden truth that Machiavelli tried to teach, that virtue without power is helpless, and that true goodness requires the strength to defend it. You are no longer harmless, you are peaceful, and there is a world of difference between the two. The harmless rabbit is peaceful because it has no choice. The lion is peaceful because it chooses to be. When you walk through the world with this understanding, you no longer attract the broken, the users, and the tyrants. You repel them. Your very existence becomes a vibration of sovereignty that they cannot tolerate. And in their place, you begin to attract fellow sovereigns, people who do not want to use you, but who want to meet you at the summit of your power. This is the destination. You have not lost your empathy, you have armed it. You have wrapped your light in the protective cloak of the shadow. You have finally realized that to truly bring light into the world, you must first survive the darkness. You have stopped being a martyr and started being a player in the game of life. And for the first time, you are playing to win. But winning does not mean destroying others indiscriminately. It means mastering the environment so that you can no longer be destroyed. This mastery begins with the subtle art of silence. In your past life, you believed that honesty was the only policy. You operated as an open book, believing that if you showed your vulnerability, others would treat it with care. You believed that transparency would build trust. But Machiavelli warns us that men are wretched, and they will not keep faith with you, so you are not bound to keep faith with them. You now understand that in the realm of power, information is ammunition. Every fear you confessed, every insecurity you whispered, and every dream you shared was catalogued by those who sought to control you. The awakened empath learns to close the book. You learn the immense power of holding your tongue. You begin to practice strategic ambiguity. When someone asks you a probing question designed to find your weak point, you no longer feel the compulsion to answer. You offer a smile, a vague pleasantry, or simply silence. You watch as they squirm, trying to fill the void that you have created. In that silence, the dynamic shifts. You are no longer the one seeking approval. You are the one evaluating the interaction. This leads to a fundamental shift in how you handle your generosity. For years you gave because you felt it was your duty, or perhaps deep down, you gave because you hoped to purchase love and safety. You overextended yourself, draining your energy to fix problems that were not yours to fix. Machiavelli wrote extensively about the danger of being too liberal, too generous. He argued that a ruler who gives away everything eventually becomes despised because he runs out of resources and must then exploit his subjects to get more. Translated into your life, this means that unrestricted generosity leads to burnout and resentment. When you give everything to everyone, your gifts lose their value. You become a utility, a faucet that is expected to run whenever it is turned on. The sovereign empath understands the economics of scarcity. You learn to withdraw your supply. You stop offering solutions to people who only want to complain. You stop offering emotional labor to those who never reciprocate. Suddenly, when you do choose to give, it is received with shock and gratitude. By making your kindness rare, you make it valuable. You are no longer a servant to the needs of others. You are a benefactor who chooses when to bestow favor. This transformation fundamentally alters your relationship with conflict. The old you would do anything to avoid a fight. You would fawn, apologize for things you didn't do, and shrink yourself to de-escalate tension. You viewed conflict as a failure of connection. But now, you view conflict through the lens of strategy. You understand that sometimes peace is only possible after a show of strength. You stop fearing the anger of others. Let them be angry. Let them shout. Let them threaten to leave. You realize that their anger is often a manipulation tactic. a toddler's tantrum designed to make the parent uncomfortable enough to give in. When you stand firm in the face of their rage, calm and unmoving, you shatter their script. They do not know what to do with an empath who does not crumble. This is where you apply the Machiavellian concept of being feared. To the modern ear, being feared sounds malicious. But in this context, fear is simply a boundary that has consequences. It is the deep respect that one has for a force of nature. You respect the ocean not because it is evil, but because it is powerful and indifferent to your desires. If you swim too far out, the ocean will not save you. You must become like the ocean. You must show the people in your life that while you are capable of immense warmth and buoyancy, you are also capable of withdrawing your support if your boundaries are crossed. The fear of losing access to you becomes the mechanism that ensures they treat you with respect. This requires you to conquer the most difficult addiction of the empath, the addiction to being the savior. You have spent a lifetime trying to heal the broken birds, trying to love the narcissist into a human being, trying to carry the emotional baggage of your family. You thought this was love. You now see it was a lack of boundaries disguised as virtue. Machiavelli teaches that a ruler must look at the world as it is, not as it should be. The reality is that some people are committed to their own destruction. Some people feed on chaos. When you try to save someone who does not want to be saved, you are not being a hero. You are being a host for their parasite. The awakened empath learns the art of cruelty well used. This is a jarring phrase, but it is essential. It means that sometimes the kindest thing you can do is to let someone hit rock bottom. It means allowing people to experience the full weight of the consequences of their actions. When you stop cushioning the fall for the toxic people in your life, they will accuse you of being cold. They will say you have changed. They will call you cruel. And you will accept these labels without flinching. You will understand that this cruelty is necessary to preserve the integrity of your kingdom. You are no longer willing to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. You hand them back their own burdens, not out of malice, but out of a supreme respect for their own journey and a supreme protection of your own energy. As you solidify this stance, you begin to master the art of observation over absorption. The untrained empath walks into a room and immediately absorbs the mood. If there is tension, they feel tense. If there is sadness, they become depressed. They are a sponge, soaking up the dirty water of the environment. The strategic empath learns to put up a glass wall. You can see the emotions. You can understand them. You can analyze them. But you do not let them touch your skin. You become a scientist of human nature. When someone tries to guilt trip you, instead of feeling guilty, you mentally step back and observe the technique. You think, look at that. They are using the victim card to try and bypass my logic. Interesting. By detaching your emotional reaction from their action, you gain the upper hand. You can respond to the tactic rather than the emotion. You can dismantle their manipulation with a simple question or a knowing look, because you are no longer drowning in the feeling they are trying to project onto you. This detachment allows you to see the hidden alliances and power dynamics around you. You begin to see who holds the true power in your workplace, in your family, in your social circle. It is rarely the person who is talking the loudest. Often, it is the quiet one in the corner, the one who listens, the one whom everyone seems to seek approval from. You start to align yourself not with the neediest people, but with the most capable ones. You realize that you are judged by the company you keep. Machiavelli advised princes to avoid flatterers and to surround themselves with wise counselors who were not afraid to speak the truth. As an empath, your weakness has always been flatterers. People who love bomb you, who tell you how special you are, how you are the only one who understands them. These are the sirens that have led you onto the rocks time and time again. The awakened empath develops a cynical ear for flattery. When someone praises you too quickly, your alarm bells ring. You wonder, what do they want? You start to value the people who challenge you, the people who are self-sufficient, the people who do not need you but want you. This is a higher form of connection. It is the connection of two strong individuals, not the codependency of a nurse and a patient. You begin to build a court of high-value individuals. You curate your inner circle with ruthlessness. If someone brings constant drama, they are demoted to the outer rim of your life. If someone brings betrayal, they are exiled completely. There is no three strikes rule anymore. The drawbridge goes up, and it stays up. This new way of being requires you to make peace with being misunderstood. For a long time, your identity was tied to being the nice one. You wanted everyone to like you. You wanted to be the saint, but the saint is a martyr, and the martyr ends up dead. To wield power, you must be willing to be the villain in someone else's story. You must be willing to let the narcissist smear your name, knowing that their lies will eventually collapse under the weight of your consistent character. Machiavelli speaks of the importance of reputation, but he distinguishes between the reputation of the moment and the enduring reputation of strength. You stop chasing the fleeting approval of the crowd. You focus on building a reputation for consistency, for competence, and for unshakable boundaries. You let your actions speak so loudly that the whispers of your enemies become inaudible. Eventually, you reach a state of flow where this strategic thinking becomes second nature. You no longer have to remind yourself to pause, you just pause. You no longer have to force yourself to say no. The no comes effortlessly. You find that you have more energy than you ever thought possible. The fatigue that plagued you for years, the empath fatigue, vanishes. You realize that you weren't tired because you were too sensitive. You were tired because you were leaking energy from 1,000 unsealed cracks in your vessel. Now that the vessel is sealed, the energy rises. With this rising energy, you can finally turn your attention to the greater good. This is the ultimate synthesis of the empath and the Machiavellian. You do not hoard power for the sake of ego. You accumulate power so that you can effect change. The harmless rabbit wishes the world were better. The lion forces the world to be better. You can now champion causes with effectiveness. You can protect the vulnerable not by weeping with them, but by standing between them and their oppressors with a sword in hand. You can navigate the corrupt systems of corporate politics or family dysfunction and dismantle them from the inside, because you understand how the game is played. You become a Trojan horse of light. You look like a player, you talk like a player, you move like a player, but inside, your core remains pure. You use the tools of darkness to serve the light. This is the hidden truth that Machiavelli tried to whisper through the ages. He was not teaching evil, he was teaching effectiveness. He was trying to tell the good men and women of Florence that their prayers were not enough, that their high ideals would be crushed by the boots of mercenaries if they did not learn how to hold a sword. He was writing a manual for the survival of the virtuous in a vicious world. And now, you have read the manual. You have integrated the shadow. You have looked into the abyss, and instead of blinking, you have made the abyss blink. You walk into a room, and the atmosphere changes. The predators smell a rival predator and back down. The broken smell safety and draw near, but they stop at the boundary you have drawn. You are in control. Consider the concept of fortuna that Machiavelli describes, the unpredictable river of fate that can flood and destroy everything in its path. He argues that while we cannot control the river, we can build dikes and dams when the weather is calm, so that when the flood comes, we are not washed away. The unawakened empath lives at the mercy of fortuna. They are tossed about by every emotional storm, every crisis of their friends, every shift in the global mood. You, however, have built your dams. You have diversified your emotional investments. You have secured your resources. You have cultivated a stoic mind. When the crisis comes, and it always comes, you are the only one not panicking. You become the eye of the storm. This stability is the ultimate form of power. People gravitate toward stability. They will follow the one who keeps their head when everyone else is losing theirs. In this state of stability, you discover the power of timing. The old you rushed to fix things immediately. You reacted impulsively to every trigger. The strategic you waits. You understand that there is a season for action and a season for waiting. You watch the patterns of behavior in others. You wait for them to overplay their hand. You wait for the moment when your intervention will have the maximum impact with the minimum effort. This economy of motion is the hallmark of the master. Think of the martial artist who uses the opponent's weight against them. You no longer struggle against the current. You use the current to propel you where you want to go. If someone attacks you, you step aside and let their own momentum carry them into the wall. If someone tries to gaslight you, you do not argue reality with them. You simply refuse to inhabit their delusion. You save your breath. You save your sanity. You also learn the importance of appearances. This is a controversial point for the authentic soul, but a necessary one. Machiavelli advises that it is often more important to appear virtuous than to actually be so, but for the empath, we flip this. You are virtuous, but you must learn to appear formidable. You must curate your persona. You stop wearing your heart on your sleeve where birds can peck at it. You wear a suit of armor. You present a polished, composed exterior to the world. You keep your true feelings, your deepest loves, and your profound sorrows for the sanctuary of your inner circle. The world does not deserve your naked soul. Your soul is a treasure, and treasures are kept in vaults, not on display in the market square. As you refine this persona, you might feel a pang of guilt. Is this fake? Is this inauthentic? No, it is adaptation. The chameleon is not fake when it changes color to match the leaf. It is surviving. You are adapting to a world that is hostile to your nature. By protecting your core, you are actually preserving your authenticity. You are ensuring that your true self survives to love another day. Let us go deeper into the psychology of the preemptive strike. Machiavelli suggests that if you see a threat growing, you must crush it before it becomes too large to handle. For the empath, this does not mean violence. It means nipping toxic behavior in the bud. It means that the first time someone speaks to you with disrespect, you address it immediately and firmly. You do not let it slide. You do not make excuses for them. You recognize that small disrespects are testing grounds for larger abuses. By shutting down the small boundary violation today, you prevent the major betrayal tomorrow. You teach people how to treat you from the very first interaction. This requires a level of vigilance that may seem exhausting at first, but soon becomes a background process. It is like driving a car. Eventually, you don't have to think about checking the mirrors. You just do it. You are constantly scanning the emotional landscape for threats, not out of paranoia, but out of preparedness. You are no longer naive. You know that the scorpion will sting the frog simply because it is a scorpion. You do not hate the scorpion, but you certainly do not let it ride on your back. You begin to appreciate the utility of distance. In the past, you tried to bridge every gap, to be close to everyone. Now, you use distance as a tool. If someone is toxic, but you cannot remove them entirely, perhaps a family member or a coworker, you move them to a different orbit. You become polite but distant. You become gray rock. You become boring. You remove the emotional hooks they used to grab onto. You effectively disappear while still standing right in front of them. This is the power of becoming a ghost in your own life when necessary. And what of love? Does this strategic hardening destroy your capacity for romance? On the contrary, it saves it. The unawakened empath often falls for the project, the broken soul who needs fixing. They confuse pity with love. They mistake intensity for intimacy. The sovereign empath seeks an equal. You no longer need to be needed. You want to be seen. You bring your strategic mind into your relationships not to manipulate your partner, but to protect the relationship itself. You understand that love requires maintenance, boundaries, and mutual respect. You do not tolerate the erosion of these pillars. Because you are no longer afraid of being alone, you are able to negotiate for the love you actually deserve. You are willing to walk away from a bad deal, which paradoxically makes you more attractive. Desperation repels. Self-sufficiency attracts. You have become a paradox to the outside world. Warm yet impenetrable, kind yet dangerous, open yet guarded. You are the velvet-covered steel. This duality is the essence of your power. You have integrated the masculine structure of the Machiavellian mind with the feminine flow of the empathic heart. You are whole. Now look at the horizon. You see the world differently. You see the strings that move the puppets. You see the insecurities that drive the tyrants. You see the fear behind the anger. And because you see it all, you can navigate it with grace. You are no longer stumbling in the dark. You have a map. You have a sword. And you have a purpose. But there is one final, crucial lesson in this transformation. It is the lesson of the return. In the hero's journey, the hero must eventually return to the village with the elixir. You cannot stay in the castle of high strategy forever. You must bring this wisdom back down to the earth. You must model this behavior for others. There are other empaths out there, drowning in the same waters you just escaped. They are being eaten alive by narcissists, exploited by bosses, and drained by their families. They are looking for a sign that it is possible to be sensitive and strong. You are that sign. You do not need to preach to them. You simply need to exist in front of them. When they see you set a boundary without guilt, they learn it is possible. When they see you remain calm in the face of chaos, they realize there is another way. When they see you refuse to be a victim, you give them permission to stand up. Your very existence becomes a liberation for others. However, a word of caution as you walk this path. Power is seductive. The feeling of control after a lifetime of helplessness is intoxicating. There is a danger that you might swing too far. You might become so guarded that you wall yourself off from genuine connection. You might become so strategic that you treat people purely as chess pieces. You might lose the very empathy that made you special in the first place. This is the trap of the shadow. If you stay in the shadow too long, your eyes adjust to the darkness, and the light begins to hurt. You must remember that the strategy is the armor, not the body. The Machiavellian tactics are the walls of the castle, not the hearth fire burning inside. You must periodically lower the drawbridge for the right people. You must remember to feel. You must maintain the discipline of checking your heart. Ask yourself, am I doing this to protect myself or to punish them? Am I being strong, or am I being cruel? Am I observing, or am I dissociating? The line is fine, and you must walk it with the balance of a tightrope walker. Retain your ability to cry at beauty. Retain your ability to feel the pain of the world, but do not carry it. Feel it, acknowledge it, and let it pass through you like wind through a screen. Do not become the wall that stops the wind, or you will eventually crack. Be the screen. The ultimate goal is not to become a cold, calculating machine. The goal is to become a wise ruler. A wise ruler is loved by his people because they know he can protect them. He is kind, but he is not soft. He listens, but he decides. He feels, but he acts. Think of the archetypes in history and literature who embody this. The warrior poet, the philosopher king, the fierce mother. They represent the integration of opposites. They are the alchemists of the soul. You are joining their ranks. As you continue to practice this, you will notice that the quality of your problems changes. You no longer deal with petty dramas and low-level manipulators. Those people naturally fall away. They cannot breathe the air at your altitude. Your problems become more complex, more interesting. You deal with challenges of creation, of leadership, of legacy. You stop fighting for survival and start fighting for destiny. You begin to understand the concept of virtù as Machiavelli meant it. Not moral goodness, but prowess, ability, energy, and the will to impose your form upon the world. Your empathy is the fuel. Your strategy is the engine. Together they generate virtù. You start to move with a sense of inevitability. When you set a goal, you do not just hope it happens. You engineer the outcome. You analyze the variables. You secure the alliances. You anticipate the obstacles, and you execute. You use your empathic intuition to read the room and know exactly when to push and when to pull. You know what people need before they know it themselves, and you can use that knowledge to lead them. This is true leadership, leading not by force, but by understanding. You understand the hidden motivations of your team, your family, your community. You can speak to their deepest desires. You can inspire them because you feel what they feel, but you can direct them because you see what they cannot see. The burden of the empath was always that they felt too much and could do too little. The gift of the sovereign empath is that they feel much and can do anything. You have transformed your sensitivity from a liability into a superpower. You have turned the volume knob of the world down so you can hear your own voice, and that voice is telling you that you are ready. You are ready to stop hiding. You are ready to stop apologizing for your existence. You are ready to take your seat at the table, not as a beggar asking for scraps of affection, but as a king or queen negotiating treaties. The world is changing. The old structures of power, based on brute force and rigid hierarchy, are crumbling. A new kind of power is emerging, a power based on connection, understanding, and adaptability. The world is desperate for leaders who have a heart, but a heart without a spine is useless. The world needs you, the armed empath, the dangerous saint. So sharpen your mind, polish your mirror, strengthen your walls, and then open your heart. The game has changed, and finally, you hold the cards. You are no longer playing to not lose. You are playing to build a world where kindness is not a weakness, but the ultimate expression of strength. This is your inheritance. This is the hidden truth. Virtue is not enough. You must have power. And now that you have it, the question remains: what will you build with it? The canvas is blank. The tools are in your hand. The rabbit is gone. The lion is awake. The silence that follows is not empty. It is pregnant with potential. It is the silence of the conductor raising the baton before the symphony begins. It is the silence of the forest before the dawn. It is the silence of you, finally coming home to yourself.